Have you ever wanted to play a game that's an open world monster taming action RPG where you explore an archipelago of islands and catch monsters to use their abilities? Well, in 2023, I started developing exactly that game, and it's called Synth Beasts. 1.5 years later, Xbox has featured the game, it's been covered by dozens of news websites garnering hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm super close to launching a Kickstarter that will bring the game to Switch 2, Switch 1, PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. And while this is already my 6th commercial game, it's the first one that has an open world, so let me take you on the 5-step journey of how I made it. And the first thing that I had to do was come up with a vision for the open world that I could base all of my development decisions on. And this is what I had in mind. Imagine an open ocean with tons of small islands that you can sail between in your ship, and each landmass is kind of like its own self-contained adventure with its own monsters to capture, puzzles to solve, and items to collect. You'll see throughout the rest of the video how the vision turned out super well, and I couldn't be happier about it. Having the vision fully formed meant that I can get to work on the most important part of the open world, and that is the ocean. By this point in development, the core gameplay had already been quite defined, and so what I did is that I just took the character controller for the levels that I had already made and replaced the visuals with a boat and just tested sailing around on the coast of one of the islands that already existed in the game. It felt really good, and actually one of the unintended consequences of using the same character controller as the monsters is that the boat can actually dash and has this funny squash animation. I'm not really sure if it maybe looks a bit too stupid to keep in, but it's kind of funny, so let me know what you think in the comments. Either way, once I had finished up setting the controller with the boat, I worked on getting the boat to react with the waves properly, and I think it turned out really well. How it works is that the water shader that I use has a component that comes with the package, and it allows you to set an object to track the surface of the water and rotate it according to how the wave is hitting that point. So I put that component on the boat visuals, which is under the character controller game object, and that was basically it. I think how this turned out in general really showcases the strength of the visual style that I chose for the game, which is kind of HD 2D inspired like Octopath Traveler. If I had gone for a full 2D approach, I would have had to have either a more boring top-down perspective for the ocean if I wanted to allow the boat to rotate in 360 degrees, or I would have had to have tons of animations made for each of the possible boat directions. But because I combined both 2D and 3D, I get to make the game evoke the feelings that I want to, while also benefiting from the convenience of 3D. After finishing up the basis for the ocean, the next step, of course, was to make the islands that populated it. This was really quite simple since I had actually already made some islands, but I just didn't have any ocean to hold them originally. So the way in which I make them is firstly I sketch out everything in Illustrator, and my sketch labels every single part of the level and what I want the level part to do. After this, I take the sketch and make the level as a white box, so no decor or anything, just super basic cubes that I can place enemies and level elements around and then just test everything out. After doing this, I play through the level, give it to some friends to test and so on, and if everything is fine, the only thing left to do is to decorate it. And I actually have a few videos on my channel already that go into detail about how I do exactly this, both for the actual level making of the white box and everything and the decoration. So after this video, if you find it interesting to learn more about this, check those out. Another feature that I implemented that is related to the islands is that each one has its own completion information in the menu. So if you visit an island and you maybe explored a bit and you didn't find everything, you can go back to the menu and see exactly how much you missed and then go back if you want to. The map that you can see here is for an early demo that I will make available to the press, content creators, and Kickstarter backers, but the final game map has about 4 times the amount of content that you see in this one. Once I had the islands, I had to of course populate them with monsters, and luckily I already have many of them because the game's development actually started with me coming up with cool monster ideas. The way in which I designed them was to split them into 2 main categories, and that is combat monsters and puzzle monsters. Puzzle monsters are quite self-explanatory, and they basically have an ability that allows them to be used for a puzzle. In a way, they kind of function like special items in Zelda. In that series of games, you have stuff like the hookshot, the boomerang, the lantern, and while all of these can be used in combat, they're very much more for specific puzzles. So here are some examples of how the monsters that are designed for this purpose work in Synth Beasts. This is Segabio, and its ability is that it attacks with a circular wind gust that is pretty decent for combat, but its main purpose is to be used on these wind turbines to rotate them for puzzles. Another example is Calvex, and unlike basically every single other monster in the game, instead of having an attack that is melee or ranged, it actually spawns a block into the world. And the block has a hitbox and of course can be actually used in combat, especially if you use it to block other enemies' attacks, but the main purpose of this is definitely to use it in pressure plate puzzles. In terms of the combat monsters, they are definitely more straightforward, but some of them have really cool abilities, like This is field tracked and it has a really short melee attack, but its ability is that it replenishes your healing resource super fast if you manage to hit it with its attack. So while you won't really be swapping to it in order to deal more damage, if you're super low on health, you can use it to get back up to full and then swap to a different monster. Another combat monster example is Ganiv, which starts out super weak, like it basically can't do anything, but as you level it up, it becomes one of the best monsters in the game because its attack goes from using all of your stamina wheel to using maybe like 10% of it. So you can attack 10 times more before having to rest. So there's tons of variety in the monsters, and of course there's nuance in what monsters are mainly for puzzles and what monsters are mainly for combat, but I think I struck a nice balance and all of them feel like they have their own place. While the monsters having specific abilities for combat and puzzles is cool, I still felt like there was so much untapped potential that I had left unexplored. So, because of that, I ended up making special challenges that are scattered around the open world, and each of these take advantage of specific monsters' abilities in ways that are not really done in the puzzle and combat situations. For example, I made a few bullet hell style challenges that basically have you dodge projectiles for a period of time, and if you manage to survive without getting hit, you get a reward. What's cool about this is that you can use monsters such as Vuitum to jump over these obstacles, and so it gives the monster a new use case. Or another really cool example is that you can use Calvex to put down its block and then use it as cover. And apart from the bullet hell style challenges, another category that I made was doing racing. How it works is that there are rings scattered around an island and you have to pass through all of them before the timer runs out. You could definitely do this with a more normal character, but if you've been paying attention to the abilities of the monsters that you've been catching, you might find a better way. Like, for example, this monster is Armatod. It's a monster that actually can't move at all, so you'd imagine that maybe that means that it would be kind of bad for racing, right? Well, actually, it's super useful because while it can't move, it can dash and it uses way less stamina for dashing compared to other characters. So if the race course is arranged in a way that would make the dashing the optimal approach, then having already caught Armatod is a great boon. I've implemented more than these two challenge types, but if you want to suggest some in the comments, I'd love to hear what ideas you've got. So throughout this video, I've explained how I've been developing Synth Beast's open world, but what I actually haven't touched on yet is how I'm going to allow players to be involved in developing the open world as well, and that ties in perfectly to what I said in the start of the video regarding the Kickstarter. Basically, I'm launching a Kickstarter campaign for the game super soon, in like a month or two, and some of the rewards will allow you to create your own monster, build your own island, and design your own boss, and I'll be involved in doing this with you if you decide to back for these tiers. All of these tiers with these super cool rewards though are of course limited. I can't just make 1 billion if people back for 1 billion tiers. So if you want to get in early, make sure you go into the link in the description and follow the Kickstarter page. The Kickstarter will not only have keys for Steam, but also Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, and even Switch 2. With the caveat that of course that version may come later, but we've actually already made a preliminary port for Switch 1, so I have no doubt that the game will play like a dream on all of these platforms. Anyways, that's it for this video. I'd love to hear what else you want me to cover about Synth Beast development. Give me any suggestions you have below, and yeah, leave any thoughts in the comments. So I'll see you next time. Bye.